Welcome to our review of this exam paper. This is the Living World exam paper from SAMS Free. It's one we set you recently. What we're going to do is go through each exam question, show you what the mark scheme says, talk about the exam techniques that you could apply to try and get the answers, and basically allow you to improve your answers so it gets to full mark. So let's get started with question 2. And question 2 starts with a map. Now, the best technique you can do when you start with a map is actually start by having a look at the key. So what you'll see is you've got a key down there. So the very darkest green is remaining forest cover. The middle sort of colour green, I suppose, is original forest cover. Well, that's forest that's been destroyed, and that means that the sort of lightest green, almost grey, is no forest. The other thing you'll notice is that you've got the tropical Capricorn and the equator marked on, and that's all there is. So before you even look at the map, just look at the key, look at the things, and then have a look at what the questions say. So have a look at question 2.1. It says, using figure 6, which of the following is true? Shade one circle only. And now basically, with this one, you go through each statement, you see if it's true. If it's not true, you move on to the next one. When you found one that's true and you're confident it's true, you don't worry about the others. And if we have a look here, number A says most of the world's forests are situated between the tropical Cancer and tropical Capricorn. So I would expect them to be in this bit here. And actually, if we have a look, there's loads of green over here. It can't be true. Second, the greatest amount of deforestation occurred in North and South America. Well, we're looking for, let me just highlight it. We're looking for this colour here. And if we look, there's some small bits here and here, but actually, there's not a great deal of that light green, middle colour green in America, so that's not true. The third one asks us for a high proportion of the original forest over in Africa and Europe has been removed. So again, we're looking for that middle colour green, and actually what we can see is there's big chunks there, there's big chunks there, there's big chunks there. So that has to be true. So the answer is going to be C, and if we look over here, we'll see that's actually the case. Then we go on to 2.2. Outline one reason for high levels of biodiversity in tropical rainforests. Now, the key bit about this is that what we're talking about here is somewhere that is on the equator, it's hot and it's wet. So the easiest thing to do is to start off by saying that, literally, that it's hot and wet all year round. That will get you 1 mark. Now, it's a 2-mark question, so again, you need to make sure you've then explained it. So you need a this means that. Okay, and the easiest thing to say is this means that large number of plants can grow or can grow rapidly. Okay, or you could talk about the fact they're on the equator, so they get lots of sunlight. Okay, which means it's perfect for plants to photosynthesize. Would get you the 2nd mark. Okay, so they would be the 2 things I would do. You can look down here and you can see there are other things that you can include, but they're the easy, obvious ones. Okay, so now we're coming on to question 3, and again, similar to the first question, this time we've got a graph, not a map, but I would do exactly the same thing. I would look at the key first of all, and the first thing I see is that I've got the amount of forest deforestation every year, and I've got a percentage of land being protected. Same thing happens again. Okay, look at 2.3, I've got 4 statements. I go through each one and I check whether it's true. As soon as I found one that's true, I'll be fine and I can stop. So annual deforestation was over 15,000 square kilometres every year between 94 and 2005. So I'm doing from 94 to 2005. But got to be clear it's that particular thing. 15,000, and I can just draw a line across there, and clearly that's not true. So that one's false. Let me just see if I can rub this out. There we go. Right, number 2. The highest level of deforestation was in 1995 and the lowest was in 2012. So again, let's have a look. 1995, well, that's definitely the highest. And the lowest it said was in 2012. That's the lowest. So that must be true. Therefore, I'm not going to worry about the other 2. I'm going to move on. Right, then I get to 2.4. Now 2.4 is, you've got to be really careful with this. It says using figure 7. Now what that means is if you don't use figure 7 at all, you can't get the marks. You really need, okay, to actually use some evidence from that diagram. So go back to the key. Well, what was there? Okay, well, importantly, look, this is land protected. So immediately, okay, you need to say land protected. That's the obvious thing. Okay, so, and the other thing, it says changes in annual deforestation. So, and probably also mention it's 2004 to 2013. So it's only this bit that it's interested in. Now, if I'm using that, okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up saying things like this. Let me just go here. So the percentage of protected area has increased, so deforestation has decreased. Makes sense? Well, why is that the case? Well, people are more aware to protect the forest, okay? Or there's been greater political pressure to reduce deforestation because of climate change. Or maybe there's been stricter government controls, okay, to stop people doing it. Or maybe the price of wood has gone down. Anything, okay, that you can justify to explain why that deforestation has decreased will get you the mark. But you really have to have, okay, that land protected, it's staring you in the face. You've got to make sure you've included that. Okay, so moving on. And we get 2.5. And it says, using figure 8 in your own understanding, explain how deforestation have economic impacts. Now again, reading that, okay, figure 8, you've got to use this information here. And your own understanding means you need to use some of your own ideas as well. And the other key bit about this is this. It says how deforestation can have economic impacts. Now, impacts is an important word. They use it a lot in exams. And most people think of impacts as being negative, but actually it can be positive. So we're after good and bad things, and equally as importantly, he says, it's got to be economic. Okay, economic means money and jobs. Right, so let's have a look. What have we got here that can actually help us? Well, we've got all these bullet points. Each one of these can be developed to get us a mark. You won't get marks necessarily for copying what's written down there, but each one, if you ask yourself, so what, will get you a mark or two. So let's go through them. That's the largest iron ore in the world. Well, because of deforestation, they're mining this iron. That iron is going to be sold overseas. That's going to increase the revenue that Brazil gets, or whatever country this is actually Brazil. It's going to be paying taxes. It's going to be creating jobs. Over 100 million tons of ore exported to Asia. So that's going to be used in Asian factories. It's going to encourage economic growth over in Asia. It's powered by a hydroelectric dam. That's generating cheap electricity. That electricity can be used in other factories, other offices, other industries. So that's going to actually encourage the growth of industry. There's a 900-kilometre railway. Well, that's going to increase transport links, it's going to make it easier to import and to export. It might make it easier for tourists to get there. So again, it's going to help grow industry. But then there's some negatives as well, if we have a look. Okay, so local Indians unable to carry on traditional farming. So traditional farming practices are less likely to carry on. So local Indians might not be able to earn as much money from their traditional farming. We know that local Indians have died. Well, if they're dead, they can't be farming, they can't be earning money. Again, local health affected of the farmers. So again, that's suggesting that the farmers themselves, if they're ill, won't be earning as much money, so they're going to be poorer, or they're going to be forced out of farming and move into the cities, and the farms are going to go fallow. Having said that, we've now got to think about, so we've gone through their fact file, we've also got to use some of our own impacts. So if you deforest, you might be deforesting not for mining, but for farming. So it might be that that means you can grow cash crops like palm oil, for example, or the deforested land can be used for timber, or the deforested land can be used for cattle or something like that. So there's a whole host of things that you need. I would pick 3 or 4 from the fact file one or two of my own and explain them. And if I can do that, I'll easily get top marks. Okay. I'll just leave this here briefly. This is actually what was from the actual exam board, and you can pick out lots of what we've talked about. I won't talk about this, but if you want to pause it while you're answering your question, you're welcome to. Right, moving on, we're on to question 2.6. And 2.6 is moving on from a named ecosystem and is looking at the process of ecosystems and food chains and food webs. So starting off, we start off with the role of producers. Basically, it's asking you what a producer is. And a producer is effectively a plant, okay, and their organisms produce their own food. They take it from the sun, they turn it into food, they use the process of photosynthesis, okay, and they're eaten by consumers. Any of those will get you the mark. 2.7 is a bit harder, okay. One reason why energy is lost in the food chain, and quite simply, we don't eat everything. If you think about an animal eating another bit of animal, it probably won't eat the bones or things, so that's going to lose some energy. If you're an animal, you're going to be moving around, so that simply means that you're going to be losing energy. You've got to hunt, for example, so you're going to be using energy there. You've got to breathe, okay? You've got to live. You've got to provide heat, so that's going to lose. Okay? And finally, to use the polite term that the exam boards use, you've got to excrete, okay? Your waste product's going to go somewhere, so it's not going to go up the food chain. So a little bit harder, it's only 1 mark, but you probably cover some of this in biology, so hopefully it's accessible. Now we go to 2.8. Now again, okay, it's asking you to use figure 9, so you'd be stupid not going back there, and your own understanding. So two classic, or actually the first one's classic, the second one's a little bit unusual, a bit harder. If a disease reduced a number of primary consumers. Now, primary consumer, remember, is something that eats plants. What would one effect on the food chain be? Well, basically, there's 2 obvious ones. Okay. The animals that eat them, so for example, if the number of rabbits died, then foxes, they're going to stop having food, so they're going to go down. On the other hand, if you're a plant and there's no rabbits eating you, you're going to grow rapidly and you're going to increase in numbers. So that's either one of those 2, okay, will get you the marks there. This one, the decomposers return nutrients by, well, you just got to explain what a decomposer is really, and it's just something that breaks down dead animals and plants and releasing that into the soil. So that's what we're after there. Right, then we get on to the final question, 2.9. Now, you guys have studied cold environments. So I noticed a couple of people did hot deserts. That's fine, it won't stop you getting marks, but it's not something we've covered. Right, have a look at the question. And it's really important with these questions, you unpick them. So let's have a look. The first thing is command word, to what extent? So it's asking you to say, definitely is, definitely isn't, might be in between. Okay, then it says your chosen environment is at risk from human activity. So basically, with these big 9-mark questions, you're most likely going to want 3 paragraphs. Okay, paragraph 1 is yes, it is at risk. There we go. Paragraph 2 is no, it's not at risk. Paragraph 3 is your conclusion. The paragraphs don't have to be equal, and actually for this one you'll notice I've got more written down for the reasons at risk than I have reasons not at risk. That's absolutely fine, but what we're after is this over here. Okay, detailed knowledge of threats, so actually specific named threats. Okay, explaining how things are interrelated. Okay, so what's happening in one place will affect animals and various other things, and okay, evaluation, that's your conclusion. So that's the 3 things the examiner's looking for. So let's go through it. I want to start off, if we're talking about cold environment, the reason that they're at risk, perhaps more than anything else, is they're just incredibly fragile. Okay, if you take something like Antarctica, where hardly anything grows, the mosses and the lichens, yeah, they grow a millimetre a year maybe. So they've got what we call low biological productivity. What that means is that the damage you do could take hundreds, maybe even thousands of years to actually be repaired. So that'd be my starting point, okay, that they're incredibly fragile. And then I just talk about 2 or 3 things that are actually doing damage to it. So for example, I might talk about oil extraction. And I might talk about how in Alaska they're extracting oil, and that leads to oil spills. The Exxon Valdez being the sort of most famous example, and that comes back down to that detailed knowledge of threats we were talking about over here. I might talk about climate change. Now, the Arctic, for example, is the most rapidly warming part of the Earth. It's already seen a 1 degree increase in temperature, and that means that new species are starting to invade. It also means that the ice is melting, and polar bears need ice to hunt, so they're at risk of becoming extinct. So I might begin specific examples of an animal here. This is getting lots of points and getting me towards that level 3 detailed answer, so I bring that in. I might talk about mining, how that creates more pollution. It also requires roads to be built, which is damaging the ecosystem. It also puts barriers in for animals like deer and whatnot to migrate. So I'd start off by saying all the reasons that explains why we're trashing the environment in the Arctic. The next paragraph would be, well, why is it not at risk? And I'd start off by simply saying this place is freezing cold, and very few people that live there. It's got low population density. So that would be my simple point. There's not a large number of people there, so therefore they're not doing large amounts of damage. I'd also point to the fact that there are places which are protected. So large areas, for example, the whole of Antarctica is protected by the Antarctic Treaty. You're not allowed to mine, you're not allowed to do any harm there. You are allowed to do scientific research, but actually that limits the amount of damage. In Alaska, okay, next to where they're drilling oil, you have a place called the ANWR. And again, it's a protected area, even though there's oil there. It's sometimes known as a Serengeti of America. So you've got these large protected areas where mining and other activities aren't allowed. But, okay, you then need to have a conclusion. And like I say, my conclusion is very simple. Cold environments are extremely fragile because of their low biological productivity. They're increasing at risk to economic activity, although some areas are protected. We've seen this over here. But even these areas over here, they're not protected from climate change. So actually, yes, okay, my conclusion would be they are significantly at risk. So that's how I'd approach that. Okay, I hope this has been useful. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm normally around Tuesday lunchtimes in my room, HU10, so you're welcome to come there. Have a go at improving this. And again, good luck, and hopefully that's been useful. Thank you so much.